afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Bennett, and I'm from the Caroline County Public Library. I'm the executive director there, and I have Charles Andrews, who is the president of the Caroline County Historical Society. And we're happy to partner up and host this event thanks to the Frederick Douglass Honor Society in Easton. And we do have Vicki Wilson here with us, who you'll meet shortly. This is our second opportunity to have Professor Bernier with us. And we don't want to take up a lot of time, but there's a few things we want to mention. First off, are there any descendants of Anna Murray Douglass or his family here today? All right. All right. And I also want to mention that we're working on another program on Bishop Alexander Walker Wayman, who was the 7th Bishop of the AME Church. And we have Henry Wayman, who is a descendant from his brother Charles, I believe. And Henry and Michelle and Thomas Fisher and some others along with me are planning a program, so stay tuned. We don't have a date for that yet, but we'll let everybody know about that. So Charles is going to say a few words and introduce Vicki, and then we'll turn the program over to Celeste after Vicki introduces her. And then after Celeste speaks, I'll come back up and we'll do about 10 minutes of Q&A, and then it's just sort of a meet and greet. So if you didn't get your question answered, she'll still be here for you to have a conversation with. And we're also happy to have Star Democrat Times Record represented by Tom McCall. Thank you, Tom, for being here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Charles.
Well, welcome to Museum of Rural Life, okay? We lost our president this past summer, Jock Wolf. Jock was known as the Caroline County historian. And there's no way I can walk in his footsteps. If he was here, he would talk 2 hours just to introduce somebody. I'm not that. I'm short and sweet. Okay? What comes up basically comes out. You can ask Alex about that. All right? So, I think I would like to have a moment of silence for Jock. That's him calling. Thank you. Now, the society, we're really becoming active. We've probably been more active in the last 2 months than we have been for 2 years. One of my board members, Kathy Spence, mentioned that just several minutes ago. Jock had programs or projects that he really took heart to. This museum was one of them. And if you look back, I don't know if you all remember the old farm house, which is located on 3rd Street. Okay? That was given to us through a 99-year lease from the town of Denver. So Jock had a vision. His vision was to make that a heritage center. For people to come to Caroline County, they can go in that heritage center, look up the information, whatever they want, and then they could go to certain outskirts of the county, like down to Winchester Mill, or go to the William Still property or the James Webb cabin. But this would be their local point where they first started. Okay? So you've noticed we've done quite a bit on the outside, but we've got the work still on the end. Of course, membership. We need members, folks. So if anybody's interested in joining the society, I think there are membership applications out to the front. Also, along with the membership, we need money. Okay? We need lots and lots of money so we can finish that Heritage Center and maybe have it in Jock's name. Okay? So, that being said, a little bit of housework. Restrooms are up to the front. We have cookies. This room here, we have hot coffee. So help yourselves. And I'll be around if anybody wants to talk or has any questions about the history of the county or anything like that. Now, Miss Vicki Wilson is... There you are. Alex C is big, and he covered you up. I couldn't see. All right. So, Miss Wilson, I'll turn it over to you, and you can do your introduction.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for having us here. First of all, I do want to bring greetings from the Frederick Douglass Honor Society. We also have Harriet Lowry here tonight. Harriet was one of the founding members of the Honor Society. We also had a great loss over the weekend, over on Sunday. We lost our president just on Sunday, so we ask you to continue to keep us and her family in your prayers. Celeste, I know we've known, so I really don't need this, but I'm trying to follow along with what I'm asked to do. But we've known Celeste now for several years, and I just love when she has these talks. And no talk is the same, by the way. So if you were here last year and you heard her speak about Anna Murray Douglass, you're probably going to hear something different again tonight. So Celeste-Marie Bernier, a professor and chair of United States and Atlantic Studies at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. She is an author, editor, curator of over 85 books, essays, exhibitions, and educational guides. Her recent books, and she's been working on these for a while, and she'll share that with you, is an 8-book series on the Douglass family lives, the Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass Family Biography and collected works. So I'm going to move down because I want to save time for Celeste. She can tell you more. In 2018, she was awarded a citation by Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford of Maryland as an internationally respected author and world-renowned historian. She is currently working on a 3-year research project funded by the UK Labour Home Trust titled Sacrifice and Survival, Black Families Fighting for Freedom in the USA and Canada. What she might not tell you was today, between today and yesterday, she spent time in the classroom at the country school, talking with students from pre-K to grade 6. So she's world-renowned, she has it all, and she broke it down so those young ones can understand. So, introduce you to Celeste.
Thank you. So much, Vicki, for that beautiful introduction, and thank you, Debbie, and everyone at the Historical Society. And I turn up like a bad penny quite regularly, and I'm so grateful no one closes their door to me. I would understand if they did, but thank you for letting me be here and be with you all. I feel so blessed and grateful. Being on this sacred ground in Denton, being in the presence of descendants and people working as part of the family initiatives and all the work everyone does is a sacred, sacred gift to me, and I feel so blessed. I've been working on the Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass family books for 25 years. There's 8 books in total, and I'm delighted since I came in May, 2 of them are finished and with the publisher. And the first of those is a 250,000 word book, and it is called Revolutionary Liberator the Anna Murray Douglass Family Biography. Revolutionary Liberator, the Anna Murray Douglass Family Biography. And the second book is also on Mrs. Anna Murray Douglass, and it is called Anna Murray Douglass, A Revolutionary Family Life in Documents. So Mrs. Anna Murray Douglass wanted 2 books, and together they are 500,000 words. And they begin the series, and they honor her place, respect her memory, and do justice to her legacy as a queen, a legend, and the revolutionary liberator of the Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass family. So I'm going to share some of the stories with you all today. It's 250,000 words and 300 images, the book, and I can't wait when it comes out. I'll come back like a bad penny again with the book to share more stories. And I would just like to share some more stories with you today. And we have some time for questions, but we also have time for me to speak to you one-on-one with any more questions that you have. So I feel very excited and privileged to be here. I also want to apologize, I brought the weather from Scotland with me. So thank you all for coming out on a night like this. But it also makes me feel less guilty with my husband who's battling storms and a hole in our roof back in Edinburgh. So thank you all for being here. My husband is battling with the means of oppression. Why not I endure hardship that my race may be free? I will do my duty as a wife toward him and our children. They shall look neat and spruce in the home, in the street, and in the schoolroom. Why not I endure hardship that my race may be free? These are the words of Anna Murray Douglass, a revolutionary liberator, a founding mother of human rights activism and liberation, whose legacy of revolution, social justice, the fight against white supremacy, the fight against white racism, and the fight for black resistance, black radicalism, and black revolution bleeds on through us today. Anna Murray Douglass lived her life by the conviction that her home was the council chamber of the free. These were her words. The council chamber of the free. She held her life and the lives of her husband and their children accountable to her egalitarian human rights philosophy. Anna Murray Douglass was a human rights philosopher, a political thinker, a revolutionary liberator, and she had a zero tolerance for any form of inequality and injustice. She dedicated her life to what she called the struggles for the cause of liberty. Her husband and their children worked with her side by side. Anna Murray Douglass was a human rights philosopher. She was a leader and an activist. She was the voice of liberation. We talk about Frederick Douglass's voice. When do we do justice to Anna Murray Douglass's voice? Why not I endure hardship that my race may be free? She was an underground railroad liberator. She was legendary and famous in her own time. And it's only through the inequalities and injustice of white supremacy today that she has been forgotten and violence has been committed against her memory. She was an anti-slavery leader, a community organizer. She was a political commentator and an author. She was also, in her own right, an orator. She was a founder of Black liberation coalitions. She was also a family builder, and she was an unparalleled and renowned foodways specialist. She was a healer, a carer, a hospitalities manager. She was an anti-racist thinker and an anti-racist educator. She was a political protester and strategist. She was a horticultural specialist and a medical specialist. She was a fashion designer and a textiles artist. She was a business owner and a financial leader. As her husband knew words, she knew numbers. She was an interracial, intersectional leader of freedom-fighting coalitions. Her house was the council chamber of the free. She was a lover, a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, a grandmother. Today we will begin to honor her legacy and do justice to her life's work. Anna Marie Douglass and her family worked together as a liberation movement and a liberation coalition. They took their intergenerational pain, their intergenerational trauma, their intergenerational suffering, and they turned it into intergenerational liberation, intergenerational activism, and a blueprint for what a world based on equal human rights would actually look like. Here you see Anna Marie Douglass beside her eldest daughter, Rosetta Douglass Spragg, who followed in her mother's footsteps and was a social justice warrioress in her own right. She was an orator, educator, and thinker, and we'll spend a little time talking about her today. But above all, the most important thing to know about Rosetta Douglass Spragg is that she herself was a writer. And the hate that she received as a human rights activist was so painful and so powerful, she didn't write under her own name. She wrote under the pen name Justice. And on the far right you see Anna Marie Douglass's husband, Frederick Douglass, and their youngest child, Annie Douglass. Annie Douglass, as we all know, died tragically at the age of 10 years, 11 months, and 21 days. In her 10 years, 11 months, and 21 days, she changed history. Annie Douglass was a liberator. Annie Douglass founded anti-slavery societies. Annie Douglass was an advisor to none other than John Brown. Annie Douglass was carrying her mother's legacy, her mother's life, and her mother's life's work. The three sons in the family, Lewis Henry Douglass, Frederick Douglass Jr., and Charles Remond Douglass, were also human rights liberators, activists, campaigners, and social justice warriors. Anna Marie and Frederick Douglass named their firstborn son for two of their closest friends. Lewis Henry Douglass is named after Lewis Hayden, the black general as he was known in Boston, who was the Underground Railroad coordinator and visionary and a liberator from Kentucky. He is also named after Henry Harris. Henry Harris is a man who lived in enslavement, who decided to come with Frederick Douglass on his first liberation attempt, which, as we know, ended in tragedy. All his life, Frederick Douglass said, "I owe my life to Henry Harris," because he refused to be tied. He refused at point pistol blank to be tied, and he gave us time to eat our passes, so we could make out we were never attempting our liberation at all. Lewis Henry Douglass carries a name of greatness. Frederick Douglass Jr., named for his father, and Charles Remond Douglass, named after the very famous black liberator Charles Lennox Remond, and a very close friend of the family. All the families were committed to social justice. Rosetta Douglass Spragg always honored her mother's legacy, and she understood the pain that would be the loss of her mother's memory. And in writing Revolutionary Liberator, the book that I've just finished, I owe everything to Anna Marie Douglass, to the family, past, present, and future, every single one of you. I love you all, and I'm grateful for you all every day. And I always ask your blessing every time I speak. I also owe everything to Rosetta Douglass Spragg. Rosetta Douglass Spragg wrote the definitive biography of her mother. Rosetta Douglass Spragg, as I said, was an educator, a historian, a social justice activist in her own right. And at the time that she died, she was writing the first history of black female heroism. It was a multi-part work. We've never found the manuscript. I dream and live in hope that we will find it one day. And the reason why she didn't complete it isn't because of her death, it's because she was blind when she died. And the reason she was blind when she died is she dedicated her childhood, her adolescence, her adulthood, working side by side with her father and her mother, proofreading, editing the North Star, dedicating her life as a research assistant to her father, and working in the cause of liberation. Now this is what she says about her mother and her father. They met at the base of a mountain of wrong and oppression. They were both victims of the slave-holding power. One smarting under the many-fold hardships of living as a slave, and the other suffering from the painful effects of such a system. My mother and my father were both victims of the slave-holding power. She also tells her audience, which is a Black Female Liberation Coalition audience in the 1900s working for change in honor of her mother's legacy, she also told them, the story of Frederick Douglass's hopes, dreams, and aspirations of freedom, you all know it. It was made possible by the unswerving loyalty of my mother, Anna Murray. I have the next slide, please. And so Frederica Douglass Spragg Perry, one of her legendary daughters, who goes on in the 1940s to found the first home economics department in history in the University in Missouri, and who teaches home economics she's learned from her grandmother as a platform to fight fascism and fight Hitler, and herself was a heroic leader, made a powerful decision. She decided to reprint her mother's remembrance of her grandmother. And this is My Mother as I Recall Her, delivered by the Anna Murray Douglass Union, WCTU, in Washington, May 10, 1900. And you see it's been republished by Frederica Douglass Spragg Perry. Black female heroism is the subject, black female heroines are the authors, and black female heroines are the publishers. As we know, the fight continues against white supremacy, which bleeds through every bone and every layer of mainstream Western society. All the Douglass descendants, Anna Murray Douglass, Rosetta Douglass Spragg, Frederica Douglass Spragg Perry, knew the power of controlling your own publishing, controlling your own story, controlling your own representation. Charles Raymond Douglass, her youngest son, also spoke about his mother's legacy. My father's home life was not prolonged. My mother was the head of the house. She was the banker, the baker, the manager. She was the officer in our field. Our father was away all the time. In thinking about Anna Murray Douglass and her life and legacy and honoring her power and her position as a revolutionary liberator, we need to begin to honor my mother as I recall her. Virginia Louise Molyneux Douglass was the wife of Frederick Douglass Jr. And after Anna Murray Douglass dies, very shortly after, in 1882, she decides to write a biography of her grandfather-in-law, Frederick Douglass, and she says this beautiful phrase that will live with us all: never forget the name Anna. Next slide, please. So Charles Raymond Douglass speaks to that life and to that legacy. Lewis Henry Douglass also understood the pain and the power of forgetting. All the Douglass children understood that Frederick Douglass will be remembered, perhaps, possibly, potentially, even in the jaws of a white supremacist, unjust, unequal world. But they knew that their mother's legacy would be entirely forgotten. And just before he dies, in 1906, he writes a very powerful essay. With what labor was it? Very few know how the work of liberation was done. How many sleepless nights and how many days were given up by family, his wife, his two sons, his daughters, to succeed. For years and years, we worked on and gave up everything, encouraged by the thought that we were working for the cause of our family, the cause of humanity, the cause of justice, and everything we did was for the emancipation and the liberation of our people. So Anna Murray Douglass is the founding mother of a radical family that has dedicated and continues to dedicate its life, its history, its purpose to human rights activism, liberation in theory, in practice, in purpose, and in reality. Anna Murray Douglass is a powerful figure in beginning to understand the life and works of Frederick Douglass. Now, so many and so few people today really understand the importance of Anna Murray Douglass. Very few have failed to do, very few have done any form of justice to her memory, and sad to say, many have done injustice to her memory. And this violence to Anna Murray Douglas's memory, this forgetting, this deliberate erasure, this distortion of her history continues to be a source of pain, which the family very much powerfully understood. Now, Frederick Douglass understood this as well. He understood that his life and his legacy would translate into a solo history. White supremacists would remember only one, and to remember him on their terms, not the Frederick Douglass of love, compassion, beauty, power, and intergenerational liberation, but a Frederick Douglass of their own imagining. So he, just before he dies, tells the real story of his life to a reporter. One of the most important things to remember is Anna Murray Douglass was a legend and famous in her own time. So as I said, white supremacist violence has taken that away from her memory. She was widely renowned and known as the liberator, the defining liberator in the African diaspora in the 19th century. And I'll talk more about that as we go. She is the person who strategizes Frederick Douglass's self-liberation. And Frederick Douglass is one of hundreds and thousands that she helps to liberation in her role as an Underground Railroad leader and liberator. So Frederick Douglass, just before he dies, honors her legacy, and this is the age he was. This is when this photograph is taken, just after his self-liberation in 1838. Frederick Douglass decides to tell the love story of his life. Whenever I read his writings, and 25 years, still going strong reading his writings, Anna Murray Douglass is my beloved Anna, the bosom of my heart, my dear Anna, the pulsing beat of my life. So he remembers the love story of his life. He told the story to me of how his wife, then a young and pretty black girl, was a freed slave. How she became touched with his fervent purpose to become free. How she used to watch him in the slave drive and keep an eye on his every movement. She was touched by his desire for an education. One day, she approached him and told him she had saved up all her earnings, that she'd sold all her belongings, and that she wanted him to run away with the money. He refused, he told me, and he refused again and again. And it was not until she told him that he could return the money and that she loved him more than all the world, that he accepted her aid and carried out the plans, that she loved him more than all the world. Mr. Douglass used to remark to me that it was this woman, his first and only love, who was responsible for his life. He also said that just as his story of slavery was to have turned on the point of feeling and aided in ending the enslavement of his race, so was this woman, on her part, responsible for everything that came through him to benefit humanity and the race. He would forcibly emphasize to me in every meeting I had with him, this is the reporter who is remembering, that his wife, and not himself, was responsible for the good he accomplished, as the first plans were hers. She had earned the means of carrying them out, and she built the strategy. As soon as he got the money, he returned the loan to her. He wrote to her and sent with it sufficient funds for her to join him. They were married quietly, and where he went, she was always with him. During the troublous times, when he was still a fugitive slave, his wife was a private detective. She watched him wherever he went. So Anna Murray Douglass is the reason for Frederick Douglass's self-liberation, and Anna Murray Douglass is the reason for everything Frederick Douglass did. As he says, she was responsible for my life and for everything I have done to benefit humanity and the race. That interview was 2 weeks before Frederick Douglass passes. So Anna Murray Douglass receives the returned loan that Frederick Douglass is very anxious to give back to her, and they are married. And as you see here, just some of the pictures of the beautiful clothes. She's a phenomenal textile artist and fashion designer. And I'm going to talk more about that. So Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass are married on Lisbonard Street, you can just see at the top there, in New York. Next slide, please. And this is what Lisbonard Street looked like in New York when they got married in the early 1838. And what is so powerful is the address of where they get married. So this is an advertisement that is in the newspapers. They get married in the home of David Ruggles. And David Ruggles is really the central artery of the Black Liberation Underground Railroad movement in New York, and a very close friend of Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass. All her life, Anna Murray Douglass works on the Underground Railroad. And so this is an advertisement for the anti-slavery bookstore. So Anna Murray Douglass dedicates her life to education, as does her husband. And the reason, as Douglass remembers it himself, Frederick Douglass remembers it, is she is touched by his desire for an education. And what comes out more and more in the writings is her fear that living on the Eastern Shore, his determination for education will result in his death. And so that's why she accelerates his liberation and the time that he is liberated. So they're married by James W.C. Pennington, also, as Frederick Douglass described him, my best friend and Eastern Shore man, who also was an Underground Railroad liberator. And Frederick Douglass says these powerful words. He said, on that day in September 1838, I made my escape from slavery, and I have been serving the slave with every breath and bone in my body ever since. And I will do till the sands of life run out of me. So on September the 15th, 1838, we have one of the most important marriages in United States history. Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass's marriage changes United States history. Together, they are a liberation movement, a civil rights movement, an anti-racist movement that has created the blueprint for revolutionary change in reality rather than in imagination, as all of their tactics, all of their visions, and all of their beliefs are at the artery of ongoing civil rights and anti-racist and anti-white supremacist work to this day. Now, very beautifully, very importantly.
Quick question. Who's the woman around her neck?
Oh, I'll talk about it later.
All right.
Thank you for the question, though. Thank you for the question. So this woman here is Cassandra Broomfield, who is a legendary bridal wear designer. And she told an interviewer that Anna came to me. Anna came to me and got me. A few months ago, she designed Anna Murray Douglass's wedding gown. So when Anna Murray Douglass marries Frederick Douglass, she comes from Baltimore to New York with a full trousseau of clothing. She's handmade with her sister friends, and with others. But at the heart and the centerpiece of that is her wedding dress. Now, Rosetta, her youngest daughter, describes it as a beautiful plum-colored silk wedding gown. To my child eyes, that dress was very fine. Anna Murray Douglass's dress, her gown, is a declaration of black female beauty, black female resistance, and black female liberation. Anna Murray Douglass's dress is a powerful weapon in social justice, created in 1838, in the same way her husband's autobiography a few years later, in 1845, is also a weapon in the liberation movement. When Frederick Douglass talks about the yearly clothing at White House, this is what he says. Men and women slaves at the Great House received their yearly clothing. 2 coarse linen shirts, 1 jacket of the same, 1 pair of trousers, all made of coarse cloth, 1 pair of stockings, and 1 pair of shoes. Total cost, $7. A very fine plum silk colored dress. Anna Murray Douglas's exquisite dress is made of silk. In 1830s, there was a blight on the trees, the mulberry trees in the United States. Silk was extremely precious and extremely expensive. And anyone in this room who's a beautiful textile artist, unlike me, who would like to be, but it's terrible, if you work with silk, you have to be of the finest ability and the finest artistry. Anna Murray Douglass wears a plum silk wedding gown to her marriage as a declaration of liberation. Coming and being a victim of the slaveholding power on the Eastern Shore, understanding how clothing is another way of killing a person in enslavement, another way of taking dignity, another way of committing disrespect, another way of dehumanizing a person's person, Anna Murray Douglas's wedding gown deserves its place in history as a declaration of black female glamour and black female power. Cassandra Broomfield herself talks about wearing this dress, and you see her here, and she says, "I felt like Anna would have felt, glamorous and beautiful." Douglass was all about motherhood and the sisterhood and the brotherhood. She was also all about what Jeff Donaldson, black radical artist in the 1960s, working as part of the black radical movement, and black power movements and black civil rights movements, called familyhood. She was dedicated to familyhood, and she was dedicated to creating a sense of family and liberation. Frederick Douglass writes these beautiful words that no white supremacist historian ever quotes or ever talks about. He says, "Anna and I married, and we never lived more happily than when we lived together." Henrietta Vinton Davis tells a story that I love to tell over and over, so forgive my indulgence for those of you who heard me say it before. Henrietta Vinton Davis, who's a very close friend of the family, black liberator, activist, performer, and genius in her own right, she said, "My dear grandmother has often told me that the belles of the Eastern Shore for miles around competed with each other for the hand of Frederick Douglass, and Anna Murray won." For Anna Murray Douglass, clothing is integral to an understanding of dignity, humanity, and equality. And her ability as a fashion designer and a textile artist is one of the powerful arsenals in her toolkit of revolution when she works on the Underground Railroad. Her eldest son, Lewis Henry Douglass, worked himself a front line on the Underground Railroad, and there's one day where he's especially disheartened and broken. He says, "A box of old clothing has just arrived in our home for the fugitives. It's so ragged and tattered to be unfit for the use of the feelings here. The idea is far too prevalent that the fugitives coming through our home can get along with anything and should be glad to get it. I'm not saying send silk and broadcloth, but send something that can be used." Rosetta Douglass Spragg, the daughter there, talks about her mother's work on the Underground Railroad. To this day, nothing has been done to honor Anna Murray Douglass as the first agent, her daughter's words, on the Underground Railroad, working with Harriet Tubman and working with all the famous leaders on the Underground Railroad, herself being one of the foremost famous leaders. For 25 years, Frederick Douglass is killing himself on mind, body, soul-killing tours, from traveling all across the United States, traveling into Europe for decades and years at a time. Frederick Douglass, when he goes to Scotland and Anna Murray Douglass is with her family, is absent from the love of her life for 2 years. During that time, she is running the Underground Railroad with her sisterhood and her interracial coalition. Anna Murray Douglass is running the home and running many Underground Railroad stations. So at any one time, she tended to run 2 to 3, depending on where she was in her home. Rosetta Douglass Spragg says this, "My mother was one of the first agents of the Underground Railroad. She was an untiring worker all along that line. to be able to accommodate in a comfortable and respectful manner the fugitives that passed our way, our father had a room secretly made, ready for them before they flew to Canada. It was no unusual occurrence for my mother to be called up at all times of day or night, as the case may be needed, to make food for hundreds of fleeing humanity. Charles Remel Douglas, the youngest son, said, "We felt we were doing a Christian and humane duty." He said every member of the family played a part. Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass and the entire family worked together as a liberation coalition. And very recently, I found this beautiful piece of memory by Anna Murray Douglas's granddaughter. And this is what she tells us about Anna Murray Douglass and the Underground Railroad. Anna Murray Douglass was famous, my grandmother, especially for being helpful and resourceful in ways and means of secreting the fugitives. She knew the best places they could hide. Everyone who brought people into the Free States came to her for her assistance. She and the children assisted day and night, carrying food and carrying people to places of safety. For many people, Anna Murray Douglass was their first touch of home. So Anna Murray Douglass, again, the white racist mythology that she didn't read or write. Anna Murray Douglass was an accomplished writer, thinker, and intellectual. Here you see her signing her name above her husband's. Anna Murray Douglass worked tirelessly on the Underground Railroad and worked tirelessly for activism side by side with her husband all her life and by herself for years, months, and decades at a time. They worked together as a liberation coalition, and they worked day and night, and they sacrificed their lives. One of the most important things that the children all remember is that they would go supperless and cold to shivering beds. They gave up their clothes and their food to all the people coming through their home. And they lived in many homes. These are the homes in Lynn. This is the home in Alexander Street in Rochester that has a fake fugitive chamber, which you can see on the side here. Next slide, please. And together she worked with Harriet Tubman, among many of the liberators, and she worked with Harriet Tubman, again, contrary to the racist, ignorant mythology, worked with Harriet Tubman on the Eastern Shore, as well as when they both had made it to the north. She worked with a sisterhood of black female liberators that included Ruth Cox Adams, who was born into enslavement and secured herself liberation from the Eastern Shore in Easton, with the aid of Anna Murray Douglass and Harriet Tubman, and with Harriet Ann Jacobs, and with Sojourner Truth. In Rochester, there is the newspaper office that everybody talks about. Above it is the anti-slavery reading room that Harriet Jacobs organizes and runs, and all of these people met regularly to strategize about the liberation movement. If only we could turn back and hear their voices and what they said to each other. Rosetta Douglass Spragg remembers her mother's work on the Underground Railroad and does justice to that legacy, as does Charles Remel, which you heard just a moment ago. And here are the receipts. So for all the white racist haters out there, here are the many receipts that are held by the anti-slavery office in Rochester that talks about the number of people that are coming through the home and all the children that are working with the different fugitives coming out for liberation. There are hundreds and thousands of people that Anna Murray Douglass helps liberation. Historians in the white supremacist mainframe talk about 400. I would say you could triple that and you would still be failing to get anywhere close to the numbers that Anna Murray Douglass helped. It's certainly in the thousands. And that's not even counting the people she helps in Baltimore, when she lived in Baltimore, or when she's on the Eastern Shore. One of the most famous is William Parker. So William Parker is a man who believes in liberty or death, and he is about to face incarceration and certain execution, and she takes him in her wing, and he comes with 5 men and secrets them to Canada with pistols and gets them safely across the border. And there's another story that I just wanted to tell, and we'll take a moment to think about it. There are many, many people that come through the Douglass home and where Anna Murray Douglass is their first touch of home and brings them back to life emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Frederick Douglass writes in his newspaper about one person, and he talks about someone coming from Easton, Maryland. And he doesn't give a name. This poor woman came to us from Easton in Maryland. We tried to get her to rest with us, but she would not. This poor woman's back and shoulders had been literally hacked to pieces. 3 months ago, her cheek was branded with burning irons. We sat with her, and she looked at us, and she said, "All I want is to get to Canada. Our heart is too full to write anymore." All of the Douglass family were protectors, guardians, healers, and carers for people coming through their home. We think of the Underground Railroad as giving food, clothes, financial support, and train tickets. It was that, but Anna Murray Douglass understood the urgency of emotional healing, of familyhood, of being part of a family. And she welcomed people into her home for days, weeks, months at a time. They worked together as a coalition over a long period of time, and in her home, and this is her home, this is one of the very rare surviving pictures of the last home that they had in Rochester that was fired by the Ku Klux Klan. And it's a very important photograph because it shows, it's a copy of a photograph, the photograph's long since gone, because it starts to show us the importance of Anna Murray Douglass's garden. So one of the most important people is Ruth Cox Adams, Anna Murray Douglass's beloved sister friend. And just for a minute, I want to spend time to honor Ruth Cox Adams. Ruth Cox Adams, as I said, made it out of enslavement in Easton, working with networks of freedom seekers that Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass had built together. Ruth Cox Adams was an intellectual, a thinker, and a brilliant educator. So by the time she makes it into Anna Murray Douglass's home, Anna Murray Douglass is sickened by the white racist education her children are getting, and she appoints Ruth Cox Adams to educate her children. This is the letter that Frederick Douglass writes to Ruth Cox Adams, and you'll notice her name. She's no longer Ruth Cox Adams, she's Harriet A. Bailey, care Anna Douglass. And so she's living in the home with Anna Murray Douglass when Frederick Douglass is 3,000 miles away in England. Frederick Douglass and Anna Murray Douglass together give Ruth Cox a new name to protect her identity, and they give her the name of Frederick Douglass's mother, Harriet, and the first name Anne for Anna Murray Douglass. Now, Anna Murray Douglass is best friends with Ruth Cox Adams all her life, and these are some of the gifts she sends her. So beautifully, thanks to their friendship, we have the hair of Rosetta, who was 6 years old when she sent this to her beloved sister friend. Next slide, please. Lewis Henry Douglass was tiny. He was 1 year and 3 months old when this was sent to her beloved sister friend. And this is Frederick Douglass Jr., who was 1 year old when it was sent to her beloved sister friend. Now, what you are looking at here is a letter Anna Murray Douglass writes to her dear sister friend. We have only 2 letters written by Anna Murray Douglass that have survived, and this is one of them. And Rosetta is clear. My mother has written to her sister friend. So you're looking at Anna Murray Douglass's handwriting. This is very controversial because the ways in which people have understood and have not done justice to Anna Murray Douglass in these terms is work that's still ongoing. So what she says, and it's a long letter, so I won't have time to tell you all of it, but she says, "My dear sister, I would have written to you before, but Frederick was not home. I wish you would come to us very much, and Perry," that's Ruth Cox Adams' husband, and the babe, "for I want to see you about as bad as you want to see me. George Thompson is here and will be lecturing all week. Anna Murray Douglas all her life was connected to white British abolitionists, was their lifelong friends and collaborators, George Thompson being the MP in Britain. Lewis, Frederick and Charles, Rosetta and Annie are all well. Annie is fast asleep upstairs, all alone. I understand that your little daughter's name is Anne, so if you come and visit us and bring your babe, for I hope you will, there will be Anne and Annie. I was not well all last week. I was sick in bed, but I'm better now. Next slide, please. I suppose you'll hear that Charlotte, she's talking about her sister, is learning a trade. Please to write this soon. Love, your sister, Anna Douglas. Rosetta was the eldest child, and Anna Murray Douglas took a very powerful and leading role in her education that is never spoken about. The first, after Ruth Cox Adams leaves the home and marries, Rosetta joins the public school system in Lynn, and one of the very few white teachers that Anna Murray Douglas is impressed with, she goes to see her, and this is the story. The wife of Mrs. Douglas called upon this white teacher, and she thanked her for the interest she'd shown in her child and the progress she'd made under her instruction. If you ever come to the city where we are going, please call on us. Anna Murray Douglas used her hospitality genius as a platform for civil rights inclusion and civil rights struggle. Next slide, please. At the age of 9, Rosetta Douglas integrated a school at Seward Seminary in Rochester. She has a horrific experience where she joins the school, there's an examination, and she is a protege. No one has seen anyone of this standard intellectually. She has the most powerful mind, Frederick Douglass's words, of any of the children. Instead of being admitted into the school, she's taken into a room with no windows day after day after day. Anna Murray Douglas refuses this indignity of her child and orders her immediate removal from the school. Together, Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass and all the black leaders in the community campaign for equal rights in all schools. One of the most powerful and important issues the Douglass family faced, and is very much an issue we live with today, is how to keep her sons safe on the streets of white racists, white brutality, and police. And one of the most powerful moments in Frederick Douglass's letters is when he talks about his anxiety. He's about to go on an anti-slavery lecturing tour, and he's worried that if his sons are on the streets, they will face danger and death. So she comes up with a solution. And she is the one who tells her husband, next slide please, to apprentice them to the North Star. So as a result of Anna Murray Douglas's intervention, not only are they kept safe from the black phobia, as Frederick Douglass described it, of a white racist Rochester, they also learn their knowledge in journalism and the printing trade. Rosetta also works side by side with her brothers in the printing trade, and this is the office that they worked in. Working together with the Black Female Liberation Coalition movement, as I mentioned, she also worked with the Black Male Liberation Coalition, and these are hundreds of people, some of which I've already mentioned: Lewis Henry Douglas, Charles Lennox Remond, William Cooper Nell, and Martin Delany. Over the generations, she also worked with important white male leaders, this one being, of course, John Brown. Next slide, please. Annie Douglas and John Brown. Annie Douglas was his political confidant, as was Anna Murray Douglas, and together they are the ones with John Brown. Frederick Douglass is on anti-slavery lecturing tours, the sons are working in education, Rosetta is working in schools. These are the children, the child that's in the home is Annie Douglas, working side by side with her mother in honoring of the memory and legacy of John Brown. In understanding Anna Murray Douglas's home, the council chamber of the free, she runs a staff. She has many people in the home, from gardeners to servants to people she supervises in the kitchen. She's an unparalleled foodways specialist in African diaspora cooking and in French European cooking styles, in all the styles. Whenever she hired any new person, and she had an interracial workforce, she said, "I hope you have no prejudice against color. I have none myself." This is the only surviving letter of Annie Douglas, her daughter, shortly before she dies. And when she dies, when Annie Douglas dies in the family, as Charles Raymond Douglas remembers, we are at best a broken family. Rosetta Douglas remembers her youngest sister, and she says, I bleed for my sister's death, but I would not return or recall her to this world of sin and suffering. Caroline Storham-Loguen is one of Anna Murray Douglas's best friends, and at the time that Anna Murray Douglas loses Annie Douglas, she had just lost Letitia Loguen, her youngest daughter. And Letitia was an anti-slavery campaigner. Unfortunately, we have no picture of her, and so Anna Murray Douglas knew where to go to find comfort and sisterhood. After a long time living in Rochester, I mentioned before the fire. The fire, as it happens in Rochester, is the Ku Klux Klan. They burn the Douglas family to the ground. And Anna Murray Douglas is done with Rochester. After 20 years of black phobia and racism and life-threatening struggle, she has to take her children out of school when John Brown happens. She's done with Rochester. As Frederick Douglass described it, I would live in Rochester for the rest of my days, but there are 40,000 black people in Washington, and my wife is in her element. So this is the first home that they have on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And this is their second home. This is a very rare photograph, one that's only come to light recently. If you look very closely, you can see Anna Murray Douglas standing at the doorway holding the hands of one of her grandchildren. You can see Rosetta. You can see Nathaniel Hawkins Sprague, her husband. And you can also see Ottilie Assing, a white German intellectual. And here's Frederick Douglass. So this is their first home in Washington, D.C. Next slide, please. They then moved to Cedar Hill, which is the final resting place of Anna Murray Douglas. And this is bought with Anna Murray Douglas's money. This is bought with Anna Murray Douglas's money. I mentioned her being an outstanding business and financial manager. Anna Murray Douglas Union is founded by Rosetta in honor of her memory. And I should say, at the time that Anna Murray Douglas passes, the beginnings of the legacy of doing justice to her memory is one that is ongoing. Rosetta Douglas Sprague, all her life, does justice to that legacy and to her mother's life, and talks about that story. So you asked about the pin. So there are different theories about who the pin is in history. It's absolutely definitely a Haitian revolutionary leader, and there's different competing theories. It's either Florville Hippolyte, who was a close friend of the Douglas family and the president of Haiti, Toussaint Louverture, of course, the family revered, or also Alexandre Dumas. Rosetta Douglas Sprague works as part of black feminist radical coalitions. This is Harriet Tubman, and this is Rosetta Douglas Sprague. And this is one of the very first black female organized moments of the National Association, where Harriet Tubman and Rosetta Douglas Sprague are there together. You can see a little bit more of a close-up here. Sadly, Anna Murray Douglas passes away on the 4th of August, 1882. When she's interviewed, she says, "I see hope for my race at this time." The family published a notice, and at her funeral are 3,000 people.
Wow.
3,000 people. Sojourner Truth had just passed a couple of years before, and there are 2,000 people at Sojourner Truth's funeral. There are 3,000 people at Anna Murray Douglas's funeral. This is the beautiful, beautiful painting made by a black painter, Oliver Brooks, commissioned by the granddaughter, that hangs in the home at Cedar Hill. And this is, of course, Anna Murray Douglas's bedroom. This is the magnolia tree, and you remember I mentioned Henrietta Vinton Davis talking about the bells of the Eastern Shore vying for Frederick Douglass. This is the original magnolia tree that still stands beside the family home. One of the powerful statements that Henrietta Vinton Davis makes is she said, "It still blooms, but it doesn't bloom as it did when Anna Murray Douglas was alive." Next slide, please. The home no longer exists on the sacred ground and the sacred land, but now we have a memorial to Anna Murray Douglas and Annie Douglas that rests beside Frederick Douglass at Mount Hope Cemetery. We have a beautiful headstone to Annie Douglass and her life as a liberator on this earth. And both of these are written by Erica Mock, a Black revolutionary liberator working today, who memorializes the legacy of the mother and daughter in the Anna Murray and Frederick Douglass revolutionary family. Together, the Douglass family worked as liberators, as laborers in the freedom movement, and very much today I'd like to leave the words with Frederica Douglass Sprague-Heron. She wrote a poem on her grandmother's death. God thought to give the sweetest thing in his almighty power to earth, and deeply pondering what it should be, 1 hour in fondest joy and love of liberty, outweighing every other, he moved the gates of heaven apart and gave to earth you, mother. Thank you very much.
Since I'm Anna's niece, her father, her husband, I'm talking about her, my father was her sister, Anna Murray, and they had a part of what we call Richtown, and according to what I understood, my grandmother, which was Anna's mother, came from the city. I'm not sure it was Baltimore, but she had a part of Richtown, which that's where her mother moved. That's where we all was from, Richtown. And Anna and Frederick, there was a part of that. And then when she was trying to, take him out so that no one could know who he was, then they spent part of the time in Talbot County. And then from Talbot County, it's in the history, Talbot County, then he went to Dorchester. He traveled because she was hiding him, what he was trying to be hidden from, being a slave. So she took clothes and disguised him as she was moving him from one place to another, so nobody would know who he was. And then after that, they left, went from one state to another. And then we never heard of them, anymore. But she was my father's sister. She was older than he was. So he never got a chance to know who she was because I wasn't born. I wasn't born, but my father told us as much about her as he could because he didn't know a whole lot about her.
For some questions? Jane?
Do we know where she was born? She's from Denton area. Did you need to know where she was born?
So there's still ongoing debate about that. But according to the family memory and the family history, her family came originally from Prince George's County, and they talk about Nathaniel Hawkins Spragg presenting as coming from the south that her ancestors came from. But in terms of exact locations and ongoing memory, that's ongoing work.
What was her relationship with Alexander Dumas?
So Anna Murray Douglass was a big believer in Black revolutionary heroism and activism, and was a big believer in Haiti as a place of liberation. All the family read his son's novels, Alexander Dumas, the novelist, and they had many evenings sharing and reading stories of many of the Alexander Dumas stories and novels.
More questions?
What was that dress? The original dress?
No, it's a great question. So Cassandra Broomfield has this vision, and Anna Murray Douglass comes to her and she recreates it using her knowledge of 19th century textile design. We don't sadly have
It is striking.
It's very beautiful.
Yes.
Frederick Douglass was a tireless lobbyist for civil reform. Are there any records that you found of her activity in support of him interacting with the administration?
during the Civil War, so a lot of the records that we have, of course she was, and you're absolutely right. The actual information we have is around the work she did for her sons in the 54th Massachusetts. So she, when Frederick Douglass goes and rallies the 54th Massachusetts at Fort Wagner, she also goes, so does Rosetta, and she gives food parcels, goes, talks with them, and stays there for long periods of time. So she plays an active role in supporting the recruitment and also supporting the health of the soldiers. So she spends a lot of time working very much as part of the Civil War movement, and especially for her sons. Yeah.
I think what we should do is move to our meet and greet. We have some coffee, I can't remember what else, and some cookies and water here. Professor Bernier would be happy to and enjoy chatting with some of you. If anybody wants a picture with her, I'm sure we can arrange for that too. And thank you all for coming out on such a cold, blustery day. So, thank you.